Celestine dominoes continue to fall. NASCAR's Josh Berry is expected to join the Wood Brothers in 2025, and Hailie Deegan will not be racing at Chicago Street Course as she has been replaced by Joey Logano. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. First, going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brendan Poole's 2024 Toxic Waste scheme that we'll see this weekend at Chicago. Really nice looking paint scheme, in my opinion, very similar to the scheme he had with JD Motorsports. I think it looks excellent. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Busch's 2024 Fastenal scheme that we'll see this weekend at Chicago. I like the white. I like the blue. I think generally did a really good job. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2024 Busch Light Peach scheme that we're going to see in 3 races in 2024, including this weekend at Chicago. I've always been a big fan of the Busch Light schemes Ross Chastain's had this year. This one's no exception. It looks amazing, looks pretty good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Chicago. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Hill's 2024 Dow scheme that we'll see this weekend at Chicago. I like this a lot. I like the Dow colors. I like the black. I kind of like the reddish color too. I think it looks pretty excellent. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2024 Marinos Colgate scheme that we'll see this weekend at Chicago. The scheme's okay in my opinion. It's really cool to see that Colgate is stepping up to the plate in spots in this weekend. The scheme's alright in my opinion. Looking forward to see on the racetrack at Chicago. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Suarez's 2024 Jockey Folds of Honor scheme that we'll see this weekend at Chicago. I like this a lot. I've always been a big fan of these kind of schemes. This one's no exception. This looks amazing. It looks absolutely incredible. And I'm absolutely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about laps. Now, we already know that NASCAR broke the record in the Cup Series for the most overtimes in a row after a Cup Series race. But it was reported that there were 31 laps completed past the scheduled distance. Remember, the race is scheduled for 300 laps. It went 31 laps past the scheduled distance. That is the most ever in all 3 of NASCAR's divisions. Obviously, like I mentioned, there were 5 overtimes in this race that caused a lot of cleanup and a lot of cautions and wrecks. I really hope we don't have the same issue going forward. We have so many overtimes in the future. Maybe we can find a way to limit it going forward. I know unlimited may be the way to go forward, but honestly, it's really shocking to see that many, but also at the same token, same time, it's really not surprising or shocking to see it overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Darrell Wolfe. As it was announced earlier this morning that Darrell Wolfe is expected to retire from NASCAR at the end of this season. Darrell Wolfe has been in NASCAR for almost 30 years and has been working at ISC for a very, very long time, advertising the sport. He always does some of the race day stuff, among other things. He has been trying to grow the branding in sport for a very, very long time. It is really sad to see that Darrell Wolfe is officially retiring. We thank him for everything he's been able to accomplish in the sport for many, many years. Again, it really does suck to see that he is going to retire. I know he hasn't been around the sport in some instances much recently, but it does suck to see that Darrell Wolfe will be retiring from NASCAR at the end of this year. As much as I haven't seen him as much recently, it sucks he will officially retire at the end of this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Guilherme St Cruz. As it was announced earlier today that Guilherme St Cruz will be the new president at Homestead Miami Speedway. There's a big teaser of a big announcement coming. Homestead, this was the big teaser, which a lot of us thought was going to be announcement for Homestead being the season finale in 2026. Obviously, they're looking for new things, and they're looking to potentially make new renovations at the track as well. I think St. Cruz has been in the industry for a long time, working his way up through the ranks, and now he's going to get the chance and opportunity to run the racetrack. Congratulations on a fantastic and great opportunity right here. I really hope he can make the best of it and do a really good job as a track president for Homestead Miami Speedway going forward into the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lego. As it was announced earlier this past week that NASCAR and Lego have announced a new set in Lego Speed Champions line that is going to come out on August the 1st. Obviously, there's been talk about a partnership between NASCAR and LEGO really ever since William Byron was featured in the Netflix documentary working on a LEGO set, and they were already talking about this early after William Byron won the 2024 Daytona 500. It is really awesome and cool to see that NASCAR is getting a partnership with LEGO, one of the biggest companies out there for toys, especially. I think it's really excellent and really amazing and pretty awesome and great to see that LEGO will be working with NASCAR going forward, as they'll be doing the championships line, which will come out next month on August the 1st. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about BJ McLeod. As it was announced earlier today that BJ McLeod will be driving the 78 for Live Fast Motorsports later this year at Daytona during the second to last race of the regular season. BJ McLeod has made multiple starts so far in 2024, not just in the Cup Series, but the Xfinity Series as well. Obviously, been the main focus is getting some select starts in other teams and not just Live Fast. I think BJ's done a solid job with Live Fast. Obviously, the goal is to try to have a great run. I remember earlier this year during the Daytona Duels where he was up front doing a really good job trying to qualify his win. Unfortunately, was not able to qualify his way into the event, but he did a really good job attempting to. It's really exciting to see that they're back. Power Slap is also going to be sponsoring, which is Dana White's company, so it's pretty cool that that partnership is coming along as well. Pretty awesome, exciting to see that BJ McLeod will be driving at Daytona with Live Fast Motorsports once again. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Thomas Annunziata. As it was announced earlier this morning that Thomas Annunziata will be driving his 6 for JD Motorsports this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Thomas made his Xfinity Series debut a couple weekends ago at Sonoma Raceway, and generally he had a very impressive run going. Not only was he able to make the field, but he generally had top 20 to top 25 pace. Thomas does come from the Trans Am Series and also made select starts in ARCA. He actually nearly won a Daytona earlier this year and had a chance and opportunity to win in Mid-Ohio as well. I think Thomas is going to have a solid chance and opportunity to make the field, though the field is extremely stacked this weekend. You've got Kyle Larson running, you've got Joe Logano running, of course, got AJ Allmendinger doing double duty. It's a very stacked and a really strong field. But there's anybody that can overcome the owner's points issues for a car, it is definitely Thomas. It's a great opportunity and a really cool opportunity. Hopefully Thomas can do a fantastic and great job with JD Motorsports this weekend, and maybe in the not-so-distant future can go full-time with this team. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fortnite. As it was announced earlier today that NASCAR has formed a new partnership with Fortnite and they have their first rocket racing track featuring NASCAR, which kind of goes around the Chicago Street Course. Obviously, NASCAR and Fortnite, I believe, have worked together in the past, if I'm not mistaken. We know they've worked with Rocket League in the past, and now it's really cool to see that NASCAR is going to work on one of the biggest games over the last decade, basically in the world. And to see basically some of the open world stuff they've been doing, what Fortnite's been doing to trying to grow, they've kind of got some relevancy recently. And it's really cool to see that NASCAR, with their Chicago Street Course track, now you can go ahead and play that on Fortnite. It's really excellent. It's just so cool to see that they're doing this. It's a really fun and great partnership overall. Pretty exciting and excellent to see that NASCAR has officially formed a partnership with Fortnite, and they'll be working with them for the Chicago Street Course race this weekend. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Dillon. As it was announced yesterday that Ty Dillon will drive the 4 for JD Motorsports this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Ty Dillon has made select starts this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I believe both of them coming with JD Motorsports. I think he ran his Circuit Americas. Remember correctly, I think he failed to qualify for that event. And I think he also attempted to run Sonoma earlier this year as well. Ty Dillon also has made a couple starts in the Cup Series with Team Amervet and also with College Racing. He is looking to make sure this car can make it in. Ty Dillon is a pretty solid road course racer, but I'm not really expecting Ty Dillon to be a major threat or contender to make the field, unfortunately. We got 5 cars that are going home, and sadly, I really don't expect much from Ty Dillon contending to make the field. I really would be cool to see him get a chance and opportunity to make the field, but at the same token, same time, like I said, I unfortunately don't expect him to make the field, but it's awesome and great to see that he will be running this weekend with JD Motorsports. I don't know how many more starts he's got scheduled. Probably going to run some more of the road course races going forward, but he's also trying to secure his job for 2025 at the moment. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if he can have a fantastic and great run with JD Motorsports this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Wendys. As it was officially confirmed earlier today that Wendys will in fact sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen this weekend at the Chicago Street Course with the company they use, Saucy Nuggets. This has been teased that Wendys was going to sponsor SVG this weekend. They actually sponsored Noah Gragson last year. Noah Gragson had the Baconator sponsorship, but unfortunately that race did not go really well. So they're hoping with SVG driving this car, they're hoping that he can be able to make the field, well, not make field, but be able to contend for the win overall and break the Wendys curse. SVG is going to have a very solid chance and a really strong opportunity to sweep the weekend. I know he's not technically in a Trackhouse car, but if I remember correctly, I think Trackhouse will be preparing the car for this weekend. And the paint scheme just looks absolutely amazing and very incredible. I'm very excited to see this opportunity for SVG to get back behind the wheel of the Wendys team. This would be, I believe, his 5th Cup start of 2024. He hasn't scored a top 10 so far in Cup this year, but I think he'll have a great chance and opportunity not only get a top 10, not only get a top 5, but I think we'll have an excellent and a fantastic opportunity to win, then sweep the weekend at the Chicago Street Course. And it's really cool that Wendys will, in fact, be sponsoring this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Austin Hill. As it was announced yesterday morning that Austin Hill will drive the 33 car for Richard Childress Racing this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Austin Hill so far has made 2 other previous starts with Richard Childress Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. He ran at Texas where unfortunately they had, I believe, a water pump issue or a fueling issue. And they also had a race at Kansas where unfortunately I think they fell out of the race early. This will be the 3rd start for him. There was talk of potentially Will Brown getting behind the wheel of the C4 this weekend, but Will Brown, I believe, is focused on trying to win his first ever championship in supercars this year. He obviously did make a start though earlier at Sonoma, and I was really hoping he can get the chance and opportunity to run. But Austin Hill is not a very bad road course racer, by the way. He can get the best out of equipment. He does a pretty good job on these types of tracks. He's contended for wins on these types of tracks. He actually won a couple truck races here, like at Watkins Glen. I think that he'll have a decent chance and opportunity to for sure get maybe a top 10 or a top 15. Again, I don't expect it to be a major threat. We might see some mechanical issues. We obviously know that RCR is looking to try to be a 3-car team in 2025. I don't know if that's going to happen. It really depends on what Noah Gragson ends up doing. Many are speculating that Noah Gragson is likely going to go to front row next year, but it's really cool that Austin Hill will in fact get the chance and opportunity to run the Cup Series of drivers like Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, and other guys like Shane Van Gisbergen who will be racing this weekend. We'll see if those two can continue the rivalry they started at Sonoma Raceway and also at Circuit Americas as well. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sage Karam. As it was announced yesterday that Sage Karam will be driving a 26 for Sam Hunt Racing this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Sage Karam has made a few select starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, driving a course for Sam Hunt Racing. I think Sage Karam is a very good road course racer. I think he actually is going to have a pretty good chance and opportunity to maybe be an underdog to go for the victory. Look, he was really strong at Road America last year and was in contention the whole entire race and ran in the top 5 for a majority of the event. And I think that Sage Karam will be a big threat for the win this weekend potentially. Though I will say the Sam Hunt Racing cars have not been as fast as I really thought they were going to be this season. Though I will say Tyler Reddick did okay. I don't think Sage Karam will, like I said, officially go for the win, but I think he'll do a really good job. He's not in a dangerous position to miss the race at this point. Sam Hunt's team gets a lot of support from Toyota. I think Sage Karam will do a pretty excellent and a really strong job. And once again, looking forward to see that he'll get the chance and opportunity to drive for Sam Hunt Racing this weekend. I don't know how many more races he has scheduled with this team for the rest of the year. There's a chance he could potentially go full-time with this organization in 2025. But as of right now, he'll be back in the seat for this weekend. I really hope he can do an excellent, a fantastic, great run at the Chicago Street Course with Sam Hunt Racing as he looks to get his first career win this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. And now we're going ahead to on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mark Miles. As Mark Miles pretty much called out NASCAR. We obviously know that every single IndyCar race will be on the main Fox network starting in 2025. He basically called out NASCAR by how many networks you're going to have to go to watch NASCAR races starting in 2025. You're of course going to have to stay on Fox, but you have to go to FS1. you'll have to go to NBC, you'll have to go to USA, Amazon, TNT, True TV, and don't forget CW as well for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And he is absolutely right that while every single IndyCar race is going to be on Fox, a lot of networks are going to be there for NASCAR. That being said, not every little bit of detail from IndyCar, every single broadcast is going to be on main Fox. The qualifying sessions, the practice sessions, and also the Indy Lights races are going to be on FS1, and some are even going to be on FS2. That being said, I do think that IndyCar is in a little bit of a better position to potentially grow. And I think that Mark Miles, obviously, I haven't been the biggest fan of Mark Miles in recent years, but I do think that Mark Miles absolutely does have a point right here with the fact that with NASCAR, it's going to be much harder to find the channels. And potentially, NASCAR is going to lose fans. IndyCar is going to have a great chance and opportunity to capitalize on those fans that are going to be lost going into next year. And having every race on Fox, like I said, is absolutely amazing and really huge for the Fox network going into 2025. So do I think they'll be successful with this move? Absolutely. I think they'll grow. But the big problem for IndyCar as well, by the way, is the fact that it's still going to be hard to find. Well, not hard to find, but it's going to be really tough for them to promote. I really hope Fox can promote. Of course, they've got the Super Bowl and the Daytona 500 to get the chance and opportunity to promote the Indy 500, but there's a lot of big gaps early in the year. And if IndyCar really, truly wants to grow their fan base, their branding going forward, they absolutely 100% need to find a way to have races closer, because right now there's such spread out early in the year. They have a lot of races at the end of these years, and it's going to end in late August. But at the same token, same time, they absolutely need to find a way to shorten up the breaks early in the year, starting in 2026, because it will not happen in 2025, unfortunately. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Christian Lundgaard. As it was shockingly announced earlier today, but not completely surprising, that Christian Lundgaard will be joining Aaron McLaren starting in 2025, driving the number 7 car, and it's a multi-year deal for Christian Lundgaard. This also confirms that Alexander Rossi will not be back with this team in 2025. Christian Lundgaard has been doing an exceptional job with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing over the course of the last couple of seasons, so it really isn't a major shock or surprise. He is the only driver that has won in recent years that has not been part of Andretti, Arrow McLaren, Chip Ganassi, or Team Penske. That one, of course, coming at Toronto. There were rumors of him being in contention for a Team Penske ride at one point, but obviously that did not happen, and we had thought maybe he'd have a chance to go to Ganassi, but obviously that did not end up happening. So where do you go? Arrow McLaren. They're looking for a much younger lineup. We know the Pat Award's going to be in the 5, and Nolan Siegel will be in the 6 in 2025, and they've got a really solid lineup in my opinion. Look, like I've already mentioned and said, Christian Lundgaard is an exceptional talent. He can get the best out of equipment in the IndyCar series, and I think he's going to do a pretty good job. I think he's going to get better on ovals for sure, and I certainly think he'll be an outside contender for the championship. That being said, outside of the win at St. Pete, it's been a long time since Arrow McLaren has won, but we do know their strength is bringing Christian Lundgaard in to really, really perform. I'm really happy for Christian. Now, that being said, what does this mean for Alexander Rossi? Well, Alexander Rossi, like I've already mentioned, will not be back at Arrow McLaren next year. I think that he will find a ride going into next season. He deserves to be in IndyCar. He had a fantastic run in the race at the Indy 500, and generally this year, he's been doing a really solid job. He's in the top 5 in the IndyCar standings right now, though there's probably not going to be a chance for him to win the championship. But he's been close to winning a few races. I think there's a chance there could be a driver swap here where we see Alexander Rossi maybe go to Rahal Letterman Lanigan. That could be a potential possibility. And many people have linked Alexander Rossi to Prema, that new organization from the Formula Feeder series that is coming into IndyCar next year with the Chevy backing. I could see Alexander Rossi going here next season. That being said, I'm really happy for Christian Lundgaard. Congratulations to him on getting the chance and opportunity. And I really hope for Alexander Rossi, though I feel confident he's going to be racing next year, I hope he can definitely find a ride for the 2025 IndyCar season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, if you watch the NASCAR Cup Series race this past weekend at National Super Speedway, you technically saw that Kyle Busch was a little bit involved in the wreck that happened on the first overtime restart. Kyle Larson sent it way too over aggressively on the bottom of the racetrack, shot way back up into the racetrack and clipped Ross Chastain, and Kyle Busch technically was involved in the wreck. But for some odd and strange reason, Kyle Busch was handed his spots back, and at first I thought it was the right call that he got his spots back, but after looking at the replay, it showed that he was involved in the wreck, so I definitely questioned it a little bit. Well, Brad Brand from NASCAR went on SiriusXM NASCAR radio earlier today, and he explained why they gave him the spots back. They said that Kyle Busch was technically not involved in the big wreck. However, I have to disagree with NASCAR here. I get where they're coming from. But Kyle Busch was involved in the wreck. It shows on the report of drivers involved in the incident that Kyle Busch was involved in the wreck. And I just, at that point, don't understand. If he was involved in the crash and the wreck, why are you giving him the spots back? He should not have given him the spots back, and I thought it was a BS call. Now, I think maybe they're looking to spruce it up and try to find a way to get the championship a little bit closer for Kyle Busch and have a chance at it to get a win, because Kyle Busch have been struggling this year, and I think they really want Kyle Busch to get a win and get his 20th straight season of winning a race. That's a theory that I have right now at this moment. I really just don't understand the call. Not to mention last year at Darlington, Bubba Wallace was not involved in the big wreck and never got the positions back that he should have gotten. Multiple drivers did not get back in the positions they were, while Kevin Hart moved up a ton of positions at Darlington last year, and he shouldn't have moved up those positions and shouldn't have had drivers like Bubba Wallace and Chase Elliott as well. It was very questionable in my opinion. I don't agree with the call. NASCAR needs to be consistent. Apparently Chase Elliott also moved up positions, which he was not supposed to move up positions, by the way, for some reason they gave Chase Elliott multiple spots during this weekend. So I hope NASCAR can clean up the officiating going forward, because trust me, there were some pretty big officiating blunders by NASCAR this weekend at National Super Speedway. I just don't agree with what they said, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hooters. As it was officially announced earlier yesterday that Hooters will no longer be sponsoring Chase Elliott Hendrick Motorsports, and they have departed their sponsorship with Hendrick Motorsports. According to a statement by Hendrick Motorsports yesterday, the reason that they have parted ways is because they were not paying up their funding and they were not paying their bills that they were supposed to be giving to Hendrick Motorsports. Hooters has been part of NASCAR for many years and has been in the sport for a very, very long time. But over the weekend, there began to be a lot of speculation and rumors that Hooters was going to be leaving the sport at the end of this year. And they were still supposed to sponsor Chase Elliott at Richmond, but then there was some details starting to come out that they would not be sponsoring Chase Elliott at Richmond. Look, it's no secret that Hooters has unfortunately been struggling in the last couple of years. It was announced very recently, about a week or two ago, if I remember correctly, that they're starting to close around 44 to 45 stores, meaning that Hooters will no longer be in NASCAR. This is a really big shame, unfortunately, because Hooters has had a big partnership with NASCAR. But hey, at least they're going to go out on top, right? Because remember, they won earlier this year with Chase Elliott at Texas Motor Speedway, breaking a very long curse that's been in place since the last time they won with Alan Kulwicki back in 1992. Hooters has had a really good business to consumer branding in the sport. And to see another iconic company most likely out of the sport altogether is unfortunate. There have been some rumors that Hooters maybe was going to be leaving Hendrick Motorsports to go over to 2311 at one point, but I don't think that is going to be happening this upcoming year. Again, it's such a shame to see the Hooters is no longer going to be in the sport. That is an iconic brand. Anything about all the sponsors that Chase Elliott's had in recent years that are no longer working with them. The Pepsi branding, Mountain Dew, and other Pepsi brandings like Little Caesars, among other things. And now another big company like Hooters is jumping ship. But we're seeing a lot of these companies struggle. Unfortunately, the economy isn't the greatest currently at this particular moment and point, and it's affecting companies like Hooters at this unfortunate moment. Do I think Hooters will ever come back to the sport? Maybe, potentially. There's certainly possibly that it could happen. But as of this particular moment and right now, I don't see them coming back to sponsor a driver like Chase Elliott right now. Chase Elliott luckily does have some sponsorship. I'd imagine that Napa or Valvoline could maybe jump over there and sponsor, because we know Valvoline just signed an extension with Hendrick Motorsports very recently. Maybe they find a way to get HendrickCars.com to sponsor Chase Elliott for that weekend. Who knows at this particular moment, but unfortunately, Hooters will not be sponsoring Chase Elliott anymore and will not be sponsoring Hendrick Motorsports. Really unfortunate, but if you've been seeing the news, it's not really shocking or surprising overall. To be perfectly honest with you, it sucks to see. There's no denying that a big company like Hooters is gone. But again, it's not a shocker or surprise to see that Hooters will no longer be sponsoring Chase Elliott anymore and Hendrick going forward. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2025 NASCAR schedule. We've been waiting for the 2025 NASCAR schedule to come out for a very, very long time. According to the Door Bumper Clear podcast, I believe this is mentioned by Freddie Kraft on that. They mentioned that the 2025 NASCAR schedule could be released as early as next week. And according to Door Bumper Clear, it sounds like it's going to be coming out on the Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. This is really, really huge. The schedule was originally supposed to be released in late May after the Coco 600, right before the Gateway weekend. But the schedule continues to be pushed back. According to Door Bumper Clear, it sounds like the Mexico City deal that NASCAR has been working on is getting very close to getting done, which is one of the big things that's been holding up. We know NASCAR has been looking to go international for the 2025 season, and it sounds like Mexico City is currently the front runner to pick it up. They're still also talking to Montreal currently at the moment, but it sounds like NASCAR will be going to Mexico City, and that is going to be replacing the Richmond Spring date in 2025. We also know the Daytona 500 is set for February 16th. We also are expecting that Bowman Gray is going to be hosting the Clash in 2025, as NASCAR will not be returning to the Los Angeles Coliseum. It is going to be very cold when we do go to Bowman Gray for 2025, but sometimes it can get in the 60s and 70s during that time. North Carolina weather can be very inconsistent. Same with Missouri weather. It can be very inconsistent. It sounds like Bowman Gray will be hosting that. There have been talks of maybe Daytona hosting it, but Jordan Bianchi's reported on it, and other people reported that Bowman Gray is going to host it. What else do we know at this point? We know Atlanta is going to be on June 28th. We do know that Atlanta, Homestead, and Watkins Glen are expected to be out of the playoffs, and we do know that Gateway is going to be going in next year. We know Darlington's going back in, and we also know that New Hampshire is expected to go into playoffs in 2025. That was reported by Jordan Bianchi. We also know that they're going to be doing some experimentation with the schedule, and we're still unknown at this point if the Chicago Street Course is going to be coming back in the 2025 calendar year, because we have to wait and see what the city decides. If they don't go back to Chicago Street Course next year, Chicagoland is right around the corner, about 50 or 60 miles away from Chicago. I believe they easily could go there. But I would love to see Chicago Street Course come back. Hopefully this weekend's event can be successful enough so we can continue racing in 2025 at the Chicago Street Course, because the weather, while there is at least a slight chance of rain, I do think that there's a good chance of possibility that we aren't going to have any weather issues this weekend. Hopefully we don't have any weather issues, so we're not having a monsoon once again. Again, we're waiting to see what the rest schedule looks like. It keeps getting delayed week by week, but it sounds like we're finally going to get the schedule. We'll finally hear what exactly is going to be coming out in 2025, what the schedule looks like. There's some big changes coming. Homestead, by the way, is expected to be kind of in that March to April area next year, according to what Jordan Bianchi reported not too long ago. We're going to have to wait and see what happens officially, what the schedule ends up being for 2025. Trust me, we will know very soon, and once the schedule does break, we will once again discuss here on the channel what the schedule is going to look like for the 2025 season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Carson Hocevar. As it was officially announced earlier this evening that Carson Hocevar has been fined $50,000 and docked 25 points. Why was Carson Hocevar penalized? Well, Carson Hocevar intentionally wrecked Harrison Burton under caution during the NASCAR Cup Series race at National Super Speedway. When Brad Keselowski got turned by Austin Dillon going into turn number 1 for around 70 laps to go, Carson Hocevar ran in the back of Harrison Burton not once, not twice, but 3 times, and then just completely right rear hooked him down the back straightaway. NASCAR, for some reason, during the race, did not take action and penalize Carson Oar. But they have penalized Carson in the past, going back to March of last year, where they gave him a 2-lap penalty. For whatever reason, he didn't receive a penalty then. But I'm glad that NASCAR did not wait around too long, and they received, and Carson Oar was able to get a penalty for this. Carson Oar deserves this penalty, in my opinion. I wouldn't have been shocked or surprised if he did end up receiving a suspension, but I think some people would have said that that would have been way too far if he did receive a suspension. That being said, Carson Oar deserves this penalty because you can't just be doing what he did during the race. He was driving way in over his head. He was making some aggressive moves. He was messing with Todd Gillen during the race as well. And I do think that Carson Oar is a very talented driver. Now, one thing before going into that, Doug Duchardt, who is the president of Spire Motorsports, did confirm that they are not going to be appealing the penalty for Carson Oar. So they're not going to go ahead and appeal. They respect and understand the decision. Again, driver hooking somebody down the straightaway, regardless if it's under caution or under green flag conditions, is just completely unacceptable and uncalled for. Remember back in 2011, Kyle Busch, driver hooked Ron Hornaday Jr. under yellow, spun him out into the outside wall really hard, took him out of championship contention, and Kyle Busch got parked for the whole entire weekend. Meanwhile, Austin Hill did not receive the same penalty. And that's once again, unfortunately, NASCAR being extremely inconsistent. But in this case, in this situation, this isn't the first time that Carson Oar has done something like this, where he's raced way in over his head and has raced stupidly and way aggressive. And he deserves this penalty, in my opinion. And I hope Carson Oar can learn from this. He's got a lot of talent, a ton of potential, and can succeed in the sport. But if he continues to do stupid and dumb things like this, he is going to lose an opportunity to race in the sport going forward. And I don't want that for Carson. I want Carson Oar to be in the sport for many, many years. And this is better be a wake-up call for him going forward because, like I've already mentioned and said, he deserves to be in the sport. He's got the talent. He won a lot of races in trucks last year, and generally he's been great. He draws from 22nd to 24th from the points, and I really hope this is a wake-up call for any driver, and not just Carson Oar. The racing etiquette on the racetrack this past week at Nashville was absolutely ridiculous. NASCAR had to do something about it, and they penalized, in my opinion, the one driver who should have 100% got a penalty. I saw some people questioning by Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson didn't receive penalties. I'll be honest with you, I don't know why, or Denny Hamlin, I don't know why those guys would receive penalties. I think it would have been unjustified if they got penalties for some of the stuff we saw on the racetrack. That being said, it's a correct call in my opinion. It's a justified call. It really is the only call that should have been made, and I'm glad to see the NASCAR realize that. I'm glad they accept it, and I'm glad to see that at least Spire Motorsports isn't going to be repealing the penalty or appealing the penalty going forward. I'm glad to see they realize that Carson Oar was driving way in over his head, way too aggressively, and like I've already mentioned and said, I think it is absolutely the right and justified call. Glad to see that NASCAR decided to go ahead and take action because what Carson Oar did, regardless of any driver, it's unacceptable and uncalled for what he did on the racetrack in Nashville, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories of today's episode as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. As it was announced yesterday that Hailie Deegan will not be driving the 15 car for AM Racing this weekend at the Chicago Street Course. Instead, she has been replaced by Joey Logano for this weekend. Now, it's not officially known and clear if Hailie Deegan is completely out of AM Racing altogether or if it's just for this weekend. According to the press release, they said even though this is the first year of our team, our second year of our team, and basically our second year as a new organization, we want to elevate our performance and see where we're at going into the rest of the year. Then we'll make a full-on decision if we are going to be done with Hailie Deegan potentially. Look, Hailie Deegan has been struggling immensely so far in 2024. In 16 or 17 NASCAR Xfinity Series races, she has only had 4 finishes on the lead lap throughout the year. Last year, the driver who drove the 15 or what was last year the 25 car, they had 9 top 10 finishes, that being Brett Moffitt, and a top 5, that coming at the Chicago Street Course. So far this year, Hailie Deegan has only had 4 finishes inside the top 20, and she has had more finishes outside of the top 30 than inside of the top 30 this year. That is not really good. And unfortunately, kind of put more down, Carson Quaffle, I believe, is only about 5 or 10 points behind her, and Carson Quaffle has only ran 5 races. She is also only 3 points ahead of Ryan Truex, who has made 6 starts so far this year, and Eric Almirola, who has won a race so far this year, but has only ran 5 races, is ahead of her in the standings as well. And Kyle C., who's only made 14 starts, is also ahead of her in the standings. Coming into this weekend, she was last in full season points. She has underachieved and underperformed so far in 2024. Coming into this year, she was on the hot seat. Look, we look at her career. When she started off in the ARCA West Series, there was a lot of hype around her. Toyota put a lot of support around her, paid her to do really, really well. And in ARCA West, she did an excellent job scoring 3 wins in a couple seasons she ran. Then she left Toyota at the end of 2019 and went to 4 starting in 2020. And she did all right that year, got a runner finish at Daytona, but generally underperformed and only got a couple top 5s. Then she moved up to the Truck Series in 2021. She had that one really okay run at Kansas where she finished in 17th. Her first year in trucks, which is her rookie year, was generally her best year in the series. She actually, I think, got a top 10 that season and finished 21st or 22nd in points. Not bad, but not completely good. 2022 showed no improvement whatsoever. I think maybe gained 1 point in the standings or position in the standings and generally ran horrendously in 2022. Then she moved over to Thor Sport Racing, and we expected her to do a lot better. She did. She only got 2 top 10s the whole entire year. Meanwhile, Ty Majeski and also Ben Rhodes, I believe, made the Final 4. And when she drove for DJR at the time, which is now Tricon Garage, she was going up against teammates like Ryan Preece, who won a couple races, both of them coming at Nashville, and Tanner and Taylor Gray, and she got outperformed by all the drivers. Then she got the chance to move up to Xfinity. She made that Xfinity Series debut in 2022 at Vegas and finished 13th. Pretty respectful if you ask me, but then she moves up full-time this year, and she just has not been panning out and doing really, really well. Look, I want to see Hailie Deegan succeed, because if she succeeds, it's really good for the sport. But at this particular moment and point, I unfortunately think this is the end of the road for Hailie Deegan, at least with AM Racing. Especially if Joey Logano comes in there and contends for a win. We know that AM Racing has not had their greatest road course program. That being said, Joey Logano is a 2-time Cup Series champion. I expect him to not only easily make the field, which there's a big reason why she's out of the seat for this weekend, is because of the fact that there's so many guys in Cup coming in, and they're 27th in the owner's points, or like 30th in the owner's points. They're just not doing that good right now, and there's a lot of great competition out there, and they're bringing Joey Logano in. If Joey Logano comes in this year and let's say runs top 5 or top 10 even, or even wins the race for that matter this weekend, then I think she is completely done. Do I think Hailie Deegan's career in NASCAR is completely over? I don't exactly think it's completely over for her. I could see her maybe making some part-time select starts in the Truck Series later this year, and maybe she runs part-time Xfinity. But I think her time in AM Racing is unfortunately going to come to an end. Again, AM Racing, they're not a top-tier team. We all know this. If you think they're a championship team, you're fooling and kidding yourself. That being said, this equipment that should be running a lot better. Matt Benedetto also, by the way, has made 5 less starts, and he's basically ahead of her in the standings at this point. She has got to do better going forward. I think her career is definitely in limbo right now. I know she's probably a candidate for Haas factory team at this point, but let's be real and honest. I think her time at the AM Racing organization is sadly and unfortunately going to come to an end. And it sucks to see for her because I like Hailie Deegan a lot. To see her struggle as bad as she has not been fun to watch. But she's been bad. I think we all can agree on that. She's not done a great job, and sadly, unfortunately, I think this is going to be end of the road, at least with AM Racing. I think her time with AM Racing is sadly going to be coming to an end, unfortunately, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Berry. As it is expected to be announced by the time many of you are watching that Josh Berry is expected to join the Wood Brothers in 2025 and drive the number 21 car. As we speak right now, a contract is being finalized. This has been rumored over the course of the last few weeks that Josh Berry has been the front runner. Let's go back to the beginning of the lore. We all know at the end of May going into June, Stewart Haas Racing announced that they would be shutting down at the end of this season. Then, of course, we had the Haas factory team come into play. Chase Briscoe was the original frontrunner to join the Wood brothers for 2025. However, they were looking for sponsorship and funding. We know that Chase Briscoe was also speaking to Joe Gibbs Racing at the time, and it was confirmed that Mark Jr. would be retiring from full-time racing at the end of this year, meaning that the 19 car would end up being available. That left Chase Briscoe the opportunity chance to drive the 19 car. Then there began to be talks and conversations about Noah Gragson potentially being a candidate as well to drive for the Wood brothers. But then Door Bumper Clear mentioned this as well, that they were getting to someone that wasn't bringing in a lot of funding. So that leaves Josh Berry. It was reported last week by Adam Stern, or 2 weeks ago I should say, that Josh Berry was becoming the lead candidate to take over the seat. Josh Berry, over the course of the last 6 or 7 weeks, has been doing an excellent and a really good job with Stewart-Haas Racing. And I think he's earned a chance and opportunity to go to another team and get another year in the Cup Series as well. Like I said, in the last 6 races, he's had 4 top 10 finishes, and again, just the performance has been there. Now, it's unknown, unclear at this point who the crew chief is going to be. Originally, we all thought that Rodney Childers was going to be following Josh Berry over to the Wood brothers for 2025. But Bob Pockers noted this and mentioned this, that basically sounds like that Rodney Childers may or may not be following him over. It sounds like it's probably not going to be happening, which is really unfortunate. I think for Josh Berry to succeed really, really much more, I think Rodney Childers needs to follow him over to the Wood brothers next year. But if Rodney Childers doesn't end up going to the Wood brothers, I could definitely see him going to Front Row Motorsports and maybe working with Noah Gragson or someone at the Front Row camp, or maybe goes to a team like Rich Childs Racing. That could certainly be a possibility, and maybe helping out Kyle Busch and getting that program a lot better. That should certainly be a possibility. But I think the crew chief most likely will be Jeremy Bullins. Jeremy Bullins is a current crew chief for the number 21 car at this particular moment in point, and I think Jeremy Bullins is actually a really solid crew chief. Again, the car is not the problem at the Wood brothers. It's the driver. This is no disrespect to Harrison Burton, because I think Harrison Burton does have some talent. But let's be real and frank here. Harrison Burton has struggled immensely at the Wood brothers in recent years, and the performance has just not been there. And every single year, Harrison Burton has gotten worse. In nearly 100 starts in the NASCAR Cup Series, Harrison Burton has only 5 top 10 finishes and 1 top 5. The previous year in 2021, Matt DiBenedetto finished 19th in the points and had a lot of top 10s. In 2020 and 19, Matt DiBenedetto in 2020 and 2021, Matt DiBenedetto nearly won some races during that time. Ryan Blaney, in that same equipment in 2017, went on to win. Every single year that car was getting worse, and they need to bring someone in. And I think Josh Berry is a perfect guy. He really, really fits the mold. Now, what are my expectations for Josh Berry going into 2025 with him likely headed over to the Wood brothers next year? Realistically, I think Josh Berry will actually be a playoff threat and contender. I think that car is a lot better than what is shown in recent years. And I think Josh Berry is going to do, like I said, a very excellent and great job. My prediction is I think he finishes inside of the top 20 in the NASCAR Cup Series standings, and I think he will contend maybe for a couple wins and get a couple top 5s and a lot of top 10s as well. I think he's going to do more in one season in that 21 car than Harrison Burton has done in pretty much the last 3 years. I think that is going to happen. And maybe in the future we could see Josh Berry down the road go over to Team Penske and take over the 2 car from Austin Cindric, and Austin Cindric get demoted to the 21 car. That certainly could be a possibility as well. Now, what does this mean for Harrison Burton? Harrison Burton most likely is probably going back to Xfinity and probably driving for the Haas factory team. We know they're expected to have 2 Xfinity Series cars next year. Cole Custer is expected to move up to the Cup Series next year and probably drive the Haas factory car. And Riley Herbst is in the running currently to either drive a front row car next year or join 2311 Racing, though Corey Heim is a candidate also for that 3rd seat. I think Ryan Preece and Harrison Burton likely head here. Harrison Burton brings sponsorship funding from Dex Imaging, and I do think that Harrison Burton definitely has quite a bit of talent. Not quite a bit, but he does have talent, and I think he'll do a much better job in the NASCAR Xfinity Series than he's done in the Cup Series, unfortunately. I think Josh Berry is unfortunately going to hurt him in the performance, though I will say that I believe that we're going to see Harrison Burton maybe get a couple wins with the Haas factory team next year. Again, I'm really excited about this for Josh Berry, and I'm glad to see we'll get the chance and opportunity to drive. Once the news comes out later today, we'll talk about it here on the channel. But like I said, it's expected that Josh Berry is going to drive in his seat. Now, what does this mean for the rest of silly season? Loosely, we talk about Noah Gragson. Already mentioned, as Noah Gragson had been a candidate for the 21 car, it won't be happening. He will either head to Front Row Motorsports next year or drive for Richard Childress Racing. It's starting to sound like that 34 car is a most likely landing spot for Noah Gragson next year. If Ronnie Childress does not fall over Josh Berry to the Wood Brothers, I think Noah Gragson will get Ronnie Childress potentially as a crew chief. There's also a chance that Sam Mayer and Christian Eckes could also be candidates for these seats in 2025 as well. Those could be potential possibilities. As for 2311 Racing, already mentioned, Riley Herbst is the lead candidate right now for that third 2311 seat. We are expecting that Bubba Wallace is going to sign a multi-year extension with 2311. It has not been announced at this point, but is expected relatively soon and not too far down the road. We also could maybe see Carlos Kerbish come out of retirement. That could be a possibility. RFK Racing is expected to say the same. There have been some rumors about Justin Haley potentially going over to a team like RFK next year, but that will not happen in 2025. We'll say with Rick Ware. We've been talking about Hailie Deegan also at one point, I think, but that's not happening next year as well. Trackhouse Racing. They're going to be a 3-car team next year. They're going to get one of the Sewerhouse Racing charters. Shane Van Gisbergen is expected to get that third seat going into next year. Zane Smith, I think, ends up at College Racing. We're still looking at that currently at the moment. I think Zane Smith gets loans out to College Racing. Junior Motorsports. There have been rumors of them maybe moving up. I don't think they're going to move up next year going into 2025. Kyle Busch is expected to return to RCR, or I've been talking about maybe him go to JGR and Hendrick at one point, but unfortunately it's not going to end up happening. Overall, there's a lot of major silly season moves that can happen. Chandler Smith and also other drivers can move up next year like Eric Almirola again. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but Josh Berry, like I said, is expected to join the Wood Brothers in 2025. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What do you think Josh Berry is going to do at the Wood Brothers next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Hailie Deegan likely being out of AM Racing altogether? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, we'll have a video talk about Josh Berry going to the Wood Brothers. You'll see a full video on that. You're also going to see Xfinity Series race picks for the Chicago Street Course. And then on Thursday, you're going to see the Cup Series race picks. And you're also going to see the paint scheme video. And if any other major news breaks, we'll discuss it here on the channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. And I'll see you guys next time for more awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody. A lot of great content dropping really, really soon.